Hi, everybody. Welcome to the 19th episode of All Things Metaphysical podcast with Kelly and Gail. I'm Gail.
I'm Kelly.
So, this is our first podcast of the new year. And so, what if we start with talking about the energy for the new year? Because I don't know about anybody else, but I had like an unbelievable stressful day today. And I'm sure other people are feeling it. It's like, did energy speed up like tenfold today? Because it was bananas.
Yeah, I've heard that from so many people today. And actually, it started yesterday.
Mhm.
And it was just, normally, at least for me, a New Year energy doesn't kind of slap you across the face. It's usually a little gentler. But this has really been intense. So,
Yeah, so it's just really interesting. Like, I was kind of excited. I'm like, is it gonna all be like this? Because, like, I don't know that I could keep this pace up. Because,
no,
like, everything was just getting thrown at me right and left, and problem solve this, and do this, and fix this, and we need your help with this. Now try that. I'm like, I don't even like, there's days where it works a little quieter, but today was not one of those. And I still have to go back to work when we're done because I need to finish a few more things. And it's just like, wow.
yeah, I think what I'm hearing anyway is a lot of people are having to be in a position to finish things. It's like our cycles are not exactly where they should be
Mhm.
if you look at a calendar. And there's a lot of stuff that's going to be chaotic because so many people are finishing cycles and getting ready to move forward into new energy. This is sort of a hangover from last year that people just need to work through. So,
So radical topic, which we did not talk about talking about, but this is what is just coming through. So depending on what people's belief systems are, because this is going to really stretch some people. In the past, when they wanted to do work on the whole planet, they would shut the planet down
right.
and then wake us all up when the work was done. I wonder if that isn't what some of COVID was about, to get us all to slow down enough for them to do the work on the planet that needed to get done instead of putting the whole planet to sleep.
I think that is what has happened. I think also we are still catching the tail end of this big disruptive galactic war that happened. And I know that's going to blow some people's minds too, but that's okay. That's what
You
we're
mean
here for.
Star Wars?
And it's sort of, I think COVID really was a way of showing humanity what the right direction is. We've been go, 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 money, 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 success, 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 fame, 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 whatever, all of that stuff has been going through humanity. And I think this is a way to reset and let things slow down, force things to slow down. And what is amazing to me, the more people I talk to, the more readings I do, I'm finding so many people that have gone through similar things. They've either had a bunch of people in their family, all of a sudden they're on the other side, they've died, or long-term relationships have fallen apart, or a long-time job, business partners. So many things have just exploded. And it was time to clear that out, that old energy. It's time to clear that out. And I think that's what a lot of COVID was.
And it's the other big thing in the news that, besides the horrible fires in Colorado, like I know a lot of people who lost their houses and things like that. But the timing of Betty White's death was really interesting too. That she couldn't even go into 2022. It could, it struck me as really interesting that when we're not meant to go past a certain thing, we can't go past
Right,
it no matter
right,
what we try to do.
right. That is very interesting. And as much as people loved her, she was kind of controversial in animal rights circles. A lot of the things that she backed were very contra to what a lot of animal rights people want. Um, Generally speaking, they're trying to get whales and dolphins out of captivity, and she was going to places showing about how happy these animals were being in a concrete box. So that made her kind of controversial. Still, she was she did a lot of good too. But I did think the timing was really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, when I heard that, I'm like, wow, that really says a lot about
Yeah.
the direction that we're going and what that really means.
I see, and I've gotten this image before, but it just popped back into my head. I see people being sorted.
Mhm.
It's like you're okay, you're not, you're okay, you have to go over here. And I've seen that, well, since the whole COVID thing started, I've seen the sorting thing. So I think a lot of people are right on the precipice of something huge that is positive in nature. And I think the truth can also be said about people being kind of a different direction. I won't say negative because it's not necessarily negative. It's just a different direction. So if you're not coming with us, you're going to be over here somewhere, and you may not be happy over there, and we'll miss you. But bye. And that's what I keep hearing is not everyone is supposed to make this journey.
When I decided to reclaim my gifts and I took opening to intuition, so it was what, 22 years ago now, or 21 years ago now. Um, in the beginning, I used to see the ascension all the time. Like I
Mhm.
would see all these people leaving, and I'm like, I don't understand. And so I was having those visions 20 years ago, and
Right,
now is the time that it's all happening.
right.
And it's just so interesting to me, like, when you get messages like that, you think it's going to happen right away and you don't understand, but sometimes they're just giving us the information to prepare us for what's coming.
Yeah. Yeah, and there are some things that I can feel coming that
Mhm.
I don't know that I'll ever be prepared for. It's one of those things, jump and the net will appear. Um, it's interesting though how, and I'm hearing a bell. It's interesting how it's flexing.
Mhm.
Yesterday and today were very difficult for so many people. And yet last weekend, even though I was sick, I felt the energy was more settled. So
Mhm.
it's like we were okay the first and the second. But oh my goodness, by the fourth, it was all over the place.
So we have some people from Facebook watching us. If you didn't accept the use StreamYard, we can't see who's watching us. But we're glad to have you here. And please let us know if you have any comments or questions. One of the comments that came in before the show was, how do you deal with spirituality and metaphysical issues if you grew up in more of a religious background and it wasn't as accepted to have those views? How do you reconcile that for yourselves?
I think that's really an individual choice.
Mhm.
I didn't necessarily grow up with I grew up exposed to a whole bunch of different religions, but it's e- even though and I've said this before, I do paranormal investigating. Usually, I work with a priest or a minister at least, and I have asked, "How do you reconcile this?" And every single person I ask has a different way.
Mhm.
But what I've been told is that. Even in the Old Testament, God says, if I give you a gift, you should use it.
Mhm.
And I'm paraphrasing because I really don't have a clue. But it seems like if your intention is to not do harm, and there is a pagan saying that says, do no harm, and you're fine no matter what you're working on. You
Mhm.
cannot set out to harm someone. So you can't go into a spiritual situation and try to play with the dark side. And I know every teenage girl I've ever run across, when they start waking up, when they start realizing they may have some gifts, what do? They go to the dark side. They try to let's cast a spell on this person. And don't do that. As long as you're not trying to hurt someone, you're okay. Um, Different religions have different views on it. Some of them actually embrace it. If you look at some of the Eastern religions, they expect that you're going to have these spiritual encounters and you're going to work with different gods, goddesses, deities, whatever you want to call them. If you are being harassed by a church, stick to your guns. I can tell you, my house was actually picketed one time by a particular church. I was not a member of that church. I didn't know anyone who went to that church, but I was doing readings.
Mhm,
And someone at the church decided that, oh, I'm doing readings. That must be satanic.
mhm.
And rather than asking or educating themselves, they decided to picket my house, which was really interesting when I picked up my 5-year-old from kindergarten. It is a shame that certain people do that. In that situation, I was lucky that I just threatened to call the police and they all left. Sometimes they don't, and you need to be a little bit more forceful. Do not back down. Don't do anything that's going to make it worse,
Mhm.
but stick to your guns. Realize that you have every right to use the gifts that you've been given. And truly, I do believe that if you don't use them, uh, they go away. And eventually, 20 years down the road, they're going to explode. And you're going to go, oh, no, I should have done that then. And then you're going to be left playing catch up with learning everything that you would have learned had you just simply kept using your gifts.
I was thinking back a couple different things. When I was in my opening to intuition course, one of the people in the class with me was an ex nun. And so it was really who was married to an ex priest. But I also recently did a reading for a priest. He wouldn't tell me what he did when we did the reading, it came out like halfway through. And, one of the things that came up in the reading was he had this lifetime when he was in like the 1700s, and I gave him the name and stuff like that. And he was able to look it up in the records, and he's like, "Oh my God, you were right. This really
Yep.
existed." And he's like, "You were right about so many different things, that I can't not believe this."
Right. Right.
So, everyone comes to it at their own terms and in their own pace. For those of you who are watching us, if you have comments, again, it just says Facebook user, so I'm not sure who's all watching us today. But please ask your questions. We're happy to talk about anything and everything metaphysical. So, but I was thinking about that, and I grew up, and I've talked about this before in the Jewish tradition, and just about, and then I always thought it was really funny that the first two people, when my third eye reopened, that came to me was Mother Mary and Jesus. I always thought that that was the funniest thing ever, and that Jesus was hanging with me. So, hence the title of my last book, Jesus and the Jewish Girl, because it just cracks me up. But it's just kind of interesting, right? Is what is really your beliefs? What do you believe? What's important to you? And what other people think, other people think. You don't have to buy into it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I find usually as we open up more and we learn more, our beliefs kind of shift. They may not change entirely,
Mhm.
but they will sort of shift. It's going to be one of those days. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's I have this weird thing where when I talk too much, I cough. I don't know what that is.
When you start to talk about things that are really important or that you have a hard time talking about, sometimes
Well,
it's
yeah, and that's a lot of what it is because I've been silenced for so long.
Mhm,
Um, I had a very, very detrimental to my psyche experience with a particular pastor
mhm,
early on in my life. And I had different influences in my childhood than a lot of people do. I had friends whose parents were Native American. They had an entirely different spiritual,
mhm,
psyche thing going on. I had people who were pagan. I had people who were Christian, I had people who were Jewish, and then every once in a while, my grandmother's friend, the voodoo priestess, would come around. So I was exposed to a lot. And what I found was that it's not the label
Mhm.
you put on what your beliefs. It's not the voodoo, Christian, Jewish, whatever. It's not that. It's what your heart is and what your heart believes. And if you're a good person, there are many different names for God. And the way it was explained to me with a Native American perspective was that there is God, there's a big God, and then there's many little gods and many helper spirits and some spirits that aren't so helpful. So it's more about what your heart is
Mhm.
rather than what label you put on it. Yes, I am glad you can help me recover from my traumatic experience too.
I just remember when I was little, and I think I've talked about this before, and I'd be sitting in the synagogue for the high holy days. I always remember sitting there going, "This is just so surreal." I mean, why do we have to go through a third person to get to God? And things like that. I just remember I was probably like 5, 6, 7 at the time, and I just always thought it was really interesting. But I loved when, there was the singing because you could feel the vibration
Right.
raising and you could feel that oneness feeling. But, it was just always so interesting to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that I found really interesting in working with different priests and ministers of different faiths,
Mhm.
they would tell me, it's not that it's a Jesus thing. And I had a Catholic priest tell me, Jesus was not a Christian. We know that. And I thought, whoa, really? But the music, I would go to a Southern Black Baptist church because they
Mhm.
were segregated when I was a child. And I loved the music and I loved the singing and the clapping and the dancing and all of that stuff. I loved that. So I would go. And then finally, somebody told me, no, you can't go there because it's not what you're supposed to believe. That's not how you're supposed to act in church. And I was like, fine, then I won't go to church. I mean, if it's not fun, why do it?
Mhm. So just really interesting.
It is interesting. Yep.
So again, just let us know if there's any questions that all of you have tonight that you want us to talk about. Mm. Someone just wrote, I remember being a teenager and telling my mom I didn't understand why it was so important to go to church to be able to talk to God. She was not amused.
Yeah, I totally get that. Yep. My grandmother tried to take me to Sunday school one time, and I asked that.
Mhm.
If God is so important and God knows everything, why do I need you to talk to him? They asked my grandmother not to bring me back. But yeah.
You rebel, you.
Yeah.
I don't
I
think
mean,
I ever questioned anything that much. I mean, I had more questions internally than externally because I knew no one could answer my questions. But
yeah.
I just would sit there and I'm like, this is really just a fashion show for the women as to who could wear the new looks for the season and stuff because I grew up in a pretty
Yeah.
affluent community at the time. And I just like, this is just so interesting to me.
Yeah. I, that
So,
was weird.
you
I
okay?
just there was
Still with
smoke
us?
over here,
Oh.
and I don't know where it came from. I swear the place is not burning down. Um,
So this
the
person,
thing at the church that my mother went to. First off, if you looked at the church bulletin, it said, "Be a bitter
mhm,
pastor." That was his name. B.A. Bitter. Passed, which I never got over. It cracks me up to this day.
Mhm,
But the thing was the new car.
mhm.
Who had the newest car in the parking lot? And they would all huddle around, especially the men, and look at the new car that somebody was driving. And I thought, wow, mm-mm, I don't think that would be what God would want. I mean,
I think though, I think it serves, playing the other side, I think it serves a purpose and it gives people a purpose or a sense of direction when people struggle to find that for themselves.
that's
And
true.
one of our viewers wrote, where would spirituality be without the rebel in all of us coming out in leaps and bounds?
Well, when I was a kid, I could see things very clearly. I was born with this, and I've been trying to get rid of it ever since. But I would sit in church with my mom,
Mm,
especially like Easter Sunday, and I would look around, and I had a relationship with Jesus by that time.
mhm,
I met Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene would used to come to me when I was a kid, and I'm like, he's not here. I don't know where you people think he is, but he isn't here. But that guy who died last week, he's here. And, it was just not a good fit for me. I did not fit into that whole thing.
And it comes back to what we started to talk a little bit about last week was these waves of volunteers who are coming to shift the earth. Very clearly, we were probably the first wave
We were the first
to
wave.
pave the way for the other people to come in and lay the groundwork and be the troublemakers and the rebels of our generation to help the younger people who are here now so they can do the work that they actually need to do.
It was nice of us to lay that groundwork.
Mhm. It's really interesting. You said it was nice of us to lay the groundwork, and then they showed me the grid of the earth and the magnetic grid over the earth right
Yeah,
now. So apparently that's what's really being worked on right now, which is why the
yeah,
energy is a little wonky. There's my favorite clinical term, wonky.
yes.
Um, it's really interesting. They're really adjusting it right now because where we're going, it needs a major overhaul.
Yeah, they don't want us all to die from our own stupidity.
Mhm.
So periodically they tweak the earth. And I think a lot of the magnetic stuff, at least around here, because there's a lot of crystal in the ground here, um, it really sets everything off. And
Mhm.
I talked to someone yesterday who said, "Why do I feel like I'm walking around like this?" And it's that's why it
Mhm.
makes people very unsettled. But yeah, yesterday and today have just been horrific. So they need to fix it quick.
Mhm. They're laughing.
Yeah.
Our idea of quick and their idea of quick are not exactly the same thing.
No, I just heard it will take as long as it takes. Yeah.
That is not my favorite answer.
No, no, and I don't have patience. So quit telling me I need to be patient. That is not a gift I was endowed with.
So is it like a quilting circle, beings attending to patching in the grid? I don't know that I would call it. I look at it more in the analogy that they told me to use. It's like when you test a battery to see if it still works. They go around testing the circuits
Yeah.
to see where the break in the circuit is and then how they need to rewire that to get everything back on board. So more like in where I live, ComEd workers, like when power goes out and stuff
Yeah.
like that. They
Yep.
said to think about it more that way if that makes sense to you. Oh, I like that analogy. That's kind of fun.
That's kind of cool. Yeah.
We have spiritual power workers.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's what it is, and what people don't really get is the damage that we're doing to the earth
Mhm,
and the animals, by the way, really is impacting us as a species. and we need to pay closer attention to that. Now, I live in the middle of cattle country,
Mhm.
and they don't believe in global warming. And yet, I will sit at the feed store waiting for hay to be loaded, and I will hear people talk about, wow, the weather sure is a lot different than it used to be. And, we used to count on this much snow, and we're not getting this. And I'm like, duh, but they don't make that connection. And it amuses me, actually. It amuses me greatly.
One of our viewers just wrote, "Now I'm singing YMCA song." Yeah, well, I mean, basically, we all need to work together. We all have our roles to play, and we all have specific things that we're meant to be doing. And it's really important for us to do them and to be authentic right now,
Yeah,
as hard as that is to do.
yeah,
It's funny
yeah.
because today I'm wearing a shirt. You can't see it too well, but it has time all over it.
Oh,
Clock
it does.
over it.
Cool.
It's funny that I put that on this morning. So, yeah. Just
Interesting.
interesting. Someone was giving me a message when I got dressed this morning, and I just didn't pay attention till now.
I've had so much weirdness the last 2 days. I'm like, I'm not paying attention to anything. I'm just looking right here. That's all I'm doing. And now they're laughing at me. But it's just, it gets overwhelming. It gets to be a bit much, especially when I had kind of a illness, brief, whatever bug I caught, and completely lost my voice. And then my knee went out. So I'm like, how are those two things related? But so I was out of
Well,
out
I
of
I
commission.
know. I know. Do you want me to answer it on the air?
Sure.
Well, your voice and your knee went out because at this age in a past life, you were cut off at the knees at this point, and you well, they did some unpleasant things with you using your voice and sharing
Yeah.
information. So, part of the reason for the intense coughing while you're talking about this stuff and doing other things is because you're trying to move beyond it and not let that lifetime paralyze you.
Yeah. I've had some really brutal lifetimes, and I've never been this old before,
Mhm.
ever.
Me
So
neither.
it's just kind of, you kind of wait for the other shoe to drop in some ways. It's like, well, this time they should be here. Where are the pitchforks? But yeah, but I was down for several days. And
Mm,
during that time, I shut down. I'm
mm.
like, you can try to talk to me. I'm not here. La, 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 la. And the minute I started feeling better, it's like, and it's like, where were you? We've been trying to talk to you about it. I'm like, yeah. But that's what happens to me. Does that happen to you?
They used to make me sick so that I would slow down
Slow
and
down.
take a couple days to be quiet. And so now I'm like, I don't want to get sick anymore. So if you need me to do that, please just tell me and I'll just sit and watch mindless television for hours for an entire weekend. And you
Yeah.
can download whatever you need to download, but I just don't want to get sick anymore to have to do that.
Yeah.
So I had a conversation with my spirit team about it. And for the most part, it works pretty well. Although I found lately that I'm doing that a lot, so I must be getting a lot of downloads. And they're like, "Uh-huh."
Mhm.
And, the freakiest thing, and I don't know if you ever experience it, is when they work on my brain or my head and I see the flashes of light. It's very weird, and it's
Yeah.
very disconcerting when I see them, like, going in and, like, almost like
Yeah.
brain surgery,
Yeah.
but yet you're awake and you can see and feel everything that's going on. And I think that's happening actually to a lot of people right now. It's just no one's
It
really
is.
talking about it
Yeah.
because our consciousness needs to shift. And part of shifting our consciousness is rewiring our brains a little bit.
Yeah. I've gotten up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and I walk past my bathroom mirror, and there's like things sticking out of my head in different colors. And it's
Mhm.
like, whoa. But speaking of things like that, I recently, because I'm in the middle of nowhere by myself now,
Mhm.
someone recently gifted me a security system
Mhm.
outside my house. And I've got some weird things on that footage. It's like you see a light
Mhm.
going across really fast, and it's not like an orb, but it's a light. It's a light, and it goes fast. And then I called him to look at the footage because I thought something was wrong with that camera.
Mhm.
And it was just, it looked like there was a fire, only it was white. It wasn't, fire colored oranges and stuff.
Mhm.
It was all white, but it was shaped like a fire, like a flames, like a big, big flames. And now he's afraid of me, but yeah, but it's very interesting because there is so much happening energetically right now to so many people. And for some reason, whether it's the land that I'm on or
Mhm.
it's me, there's a lot of stuff around here. The people across the highway swear that they see um, orbs shooting out of my house every evening. So it's weirdness, weirdness.
And you talk about it all so calmly.
It's my life. It's my life. It's just, it has freaked people out who have stayed with me. It used to freak my ex out. I do believe that's part of the reason he is now many, many, many hundreds of miles away. But I think it's this land, honestly. Um, Here's a spirituality, religious kind of thing. When I bought the land, the first thing I did was contact a local shaman. The Chiricahua Apache were in this area, and I made sure to find a Chiricahua Apache um, descendant.
Mhm.
And I got someone out, and then I also had a friend of mine who went to seminary school but kind of didn't quite make the priesthood, and came out and did a big blessing, huge blessing. And we had fires and we did crystals of four corners, and we did a whole lot of stuff here. And I think maybe because the energies are shifting, I think maybe that's why this place seems to be a beacon of whatever. But just to make sure, I also had a Buddhist monk come out and say prayers. So it's like everything I could think of. I should have found a rabbi, but there wasn't one close enough to come out. Everything I like covered it with everything. Um, the
So the
spirit,
Native American that stands watch on your property, I don't know what he's trying to say. I don't know if you can feel him. I mean, he's very clearly here. He's
yeah,
literally standing behind you. But
yeah.
so I don't know. He wants to say something, and I don't know what it is that he wants to say. So I just wanted to see if maybe you knew what it was.
I am here. This is a strange, convoluted thing that's going to maybe make some people's heads explode. But in a previous life, I was here and I was very angry with the white people that were coming through. And there was an event that was horrible on this property. And I didn't realize it was this property until after I started doing historical. The way I got this property was weird. I paid 1/20th of what this property would have sold for on the open. Nobody wanted it.
Hmm.
And but when I was an Apache shaman, I was a medicine man. I placed a curse on this valley because of the horribleness. I watched my family be slaughtered, and I remember it, and I can see it like it's a movie playing out in front of me. And I did some really bad things to make sure that this area would never succeed. And I was very thorough because it never has. Communities here have dried up and blown away because nobody wants to be here. And this is because I drum. I do Native American drumming. I use a buffalo drum. And I go outside and I walk the property in the middle of the night, and people out here think I'm nuts, but that's okay. Maybe I am. And I'm trying to heal it,
Well, he just actually said that it's time to move forward now,
and it is.
time to let that all go.
And I've done some ceremony lately to seal that.
Mhm.
But that's why he's here. That's why he's here. I had to be here to heal it. I had to be here to undo what I did, and that's done.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I had one of those lifetimes in Egypt. Yeah.
Sometimes I think about all of the things that I've gone through in this life, and
Mhm.
I go, well, I kind of was really bad at one time. I did a lot of really not so good things to a lot of people in a lot of lifetimes. So
But
this is,
isn't that what we were here to learn? We were
yeah,
here to learn duality. So in order to learn duality, you really had to do both to see what both sides were worth, and then
right,
you had to make a choice
right.
as to which direction you really wanted to go with all the lifetimes that you've had, and how you wanted to move beyond that.
Yeah. Somebody says planting sage outside. You should see my herb garden. I have sage and rosemary and just all sorts of protection plants all the way around here, and even some that are specific to this area. So yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
So it's really interesting stuff. What again, depending on people's belief systems and what they believe. It's never been my intention to try and make people believe what I believe. I think
mhm,
everyone is entitled to their own thoughts. And this is just one perspective. Take
right,
it, leave it. It's completely up to you what you want to do with any of the conversations that we have on the show. We're just here to share what our experiences have been so far and what we've learned from them, so that maybe it'll help someone and maybe it'll
right.
open someone. You never know. But it's important to talk about these things that no one else feels comfortable talking about.
It is, and you have to. Don't shut down. We need everybody right now to be open. So whatever you do, um, don't shut down.
Mhm.
You need to reach out to us or reach out to somebody else. It doesn't matter. Reach out if you feel like you're going to be shut down,
Mhm.
because there are forces and energies out there that only want us to shut down right now. Don't do that.
So, anyone else who's watching have any questions or comments or things that you want us to talk about or things that you're curious about that make you go, hmm? It's just, this really is an interesting time to be on the earth and to be alive and to be part of what's happening right now. And I think, I know when my friends lost their house, and I know quite a few people who actually lost their houses in the Arizona fires. It really put a lot of things in perspective and made things really crystal clear for me. And even my friend, has an interesting attitude about it and what it means and things like that. And it's just stuff is just stuff. And I know I get caught up in it, and especially now that my parents are gone. It's like, how much of their stuff do I keep? What do I
Right.
let go of? Some of the stuff I've let go of that I think about sometimes, I get really angry with myself that I let go of that. But then I'm like, what would I really do with it anyway? If I still had it. And so it's really finding out what are the really important things for you, what really matters, and who really matters to you. And who do you want in your inner circle, and who really doesn't belong in your inner circle? Huh, didn't know I was talking about that.
Yeah. Well, but that's a really important thing, especially right now,
Mhm.
because I know I've had the wrong people in my circle many times in my life because I'm very stubborn and I give people way more chances than they deserve.
Yeah.
But right now, it's really important to find those people that belong in your inner circle. And it doesn't mean you need to completely exclude somebody that's on the fringes, but make sure you keep your inner circle tight and
Mhm.
don't let in what I used to call the infiltrators.
I know that I'm very guilty of being too compassionate sometimes. Because and just like you, and we've talked a little bit about it before, I can see to people's cores, and sometimes I overlook their humanity,
Yeah.
but then I get smacked with it over and
Yep.
over again. And for myself, I finally made the decision that I'm just not willing to do that anymore. If you're
Right.
not going to treat me Well, on a human level, I don't care what you're like on a spiritual level anymore because we all deserve to be treated with compassion.
Right. And, as someone who literally saved somebody's life, gave them a home, gave them a job, and then had them destroy my business, I can tell you that's really important.
Mhm.
You have to see people for who they are, and they will always show you who they are. And you just have to make sure that you see the first time. You will save yourself so much hassle.
One of the things that I do now and that I say, like when a situation arises, and I just say to myself, thank you for showing me who you really are again.
Right.
Yes, our inner circle is the crux of our personal spirituality because, the other word that they use to describe it a lot is our tribe,
Our tribe. Yeah.
is really finding your tribe because everyone wants to belong and everyone really does want to feel connected.
Right.
So it's finding those people in your life where you have that and you have that feeling
Yeah.
that I think is really important.
Yeah, and you may find that your tribe is, hundreds of miles in any direction. Really, until the advent of social media, I was out here feeling very, very, very alone in
Mhm,
many respects because the people around me, either through business or whatever it was, animal rescue mostly, um, I couldn't find those people
mhm,
that really belonged in my life. I found a lot of people who used me. I found a
mhm.
lot of people who would, two-faced people who would be really nice to me to my face and then talk, about me behind my back. And the thing is, I always knew. And yet, at that point in my life, either mostly because of animal rescue, but a lot of business too. I kept those people around because we had sort of a symbiotic relationship in some way or other. These days, I don't care. I fire real estate clients all the time to the
Mhm,
point where I don't have any anymore, and I'm happy with that. Um, but you have to really, really make sure the people you think are in your tribe really are,
mhm.
because some people kind of masquerade. Um, but when they show you the first time, see it.
Well, like I said, sometimes I'll give people the benefit of the doubt, but not more than twice, you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Any last comments, questions, concerns, or things you want to bring up before we call this one a show?
Somebody mentioned gratitude, grateful for the tribe. Really, right now, the world needs us to be grateful for everything, not only for the people in our lives, but for the planet we're on. It just gratitude right now is really, really important.
Mhm. Someone just said, great podcast, y'all. So I guess we can't top that. So we'll call it a podcast this
Yep.
evening. And we will see you guys all again next week. Again, if anything comes up between now and our next podcast, send either one of us an email or a instant message or just contact us in some way, telepathically tell us. We'll probably get it that way too.
Yeah, we will.
Um, and we will see you guys all again next week. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Bye.